Hello everyone, welcome to SSRR 2020 conference. My name is Sanjay Sharma. I'm a PhD candidate at University of Georgia College of Engineering. So in this video, I'm going to present my work on impact of heterogeneity in multi-robot systems on collective behaviors studied using a search and rescue problem. This is the outline of our current presentation. We start by briefly introducing the search and rescue problems, followed by SAR problem formulation and our proposed approach. Finally, we present some snapshots of our simulations and the results obtained from our analysis. I would like to briefly introduce the SAR in disaster scenario. Disasters can cause severe loss of lives, disruption to systems, functionally and physically, impacting humans, materials, the environment, and the economy. And these can be either short-term or long-term, natural or human-made. After disaster, reacting and immediately responding is crucial to mitigate the loss of life and also to reduce the damage. And many times this can get hard for humans, which mostly involves conducting search and rescue operations involving other humans and sometimes hazardous materials also. So in those cases, the use of UAVs, UGVs, UUVs have proven beneficial. And here we specifically emphasize the application and need for employing heterogeneous teams of robots for quick and efficient response. The recent research in urban search and rescue applications of HMRS focuses on developing decision-making strategies and novel communication networks to reduce human effort and exposure to hazardous environments. So most of the HMRS strategies are focused on accomplishing a mission through collective task accomplishment and cooperation. So these missions are generally divided into subtasks assigned to robots depending on their capability by assessing their performance or through some kind of mechanisms like auction. Before introducing the problem in our study, let's take a closer look at the definition of heterogeneous multi-robot system. So a robotic team might comprise of various types of robots and can also just be a single robot. So the basic requirements of a robotic team are the robot should move in an environment, have some sensing abilities and perform some manipulations. So these robots can be either autonomous with a decentralized control or a centralized control or can be remotely operated. So now as you can see, multi-robot teams is the one that has one or more robots in it. So further, a multi-robot team may demonstrate emergence and may be collectively or individually intelligent. So we precisely define these as it allows us to delineate the swarm robotic system from HMR system. So a swarm robotic system, the expectation is that the robots are individually not intelligent but are collectively intelligent by demonstrating emergence, which is observed through collaboration in large numbers. Also, these are usually one type of agent but large in numbers. HMRS, on the other hand, may involve a variety of robots which may or may not collaborate or demonstrate partnerships, and these are relatively smaller in group size compared to a swarm robot system. So there is a similarity between HMRS strategies and symbiotic relationships observed in nature, which are pretty common. These partnerships between different species in nature, like a heterogeneous team of robots, are required for the survival, betterment, and evolution of a species. And generally, depending on the direction of benefit, these are classified as mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. So in mutualism, both species get benefited through collaboration. In commensalism, one gets benefited and the other one is not harmed, whereas in parasitism, one gets harmed while the other one gets benefited. So drawing inspiration from these relationships, we asked ourselves a fundamental question. So is heterogeneity significant in a multi-robot system? And if so, how do we demonstrate the functionality overlap between the agents? So in order to understand this, let's start formulating our SAR problem. Our SAR problem definition is very specific to the question we asked, and we present the details of this SAR model by first defining the search space. So the search space or the configuration space is a rectangular space with dimensions x and y, and we distribute the target points similar to victims in a USAR problem randomly in the configuration space. So the goal is to move these targets distributed in the search space to one of the collection points, and it must be noted that the targets and the collection points in our current problem are static. And finally, we have two types of robots, searchers and retrievers. So the next part is the sensor models. The sensor suite on both searchers and rescuers contain sensors for collision detection, short range target detection, long range target detection, and communication. First basic sensor we model is a collision detector. The collision detector is a disc with a sensor which detects the collisions with the regions and walls. The sensor detects the presence of an obstacle along with its point of collision along the boundary. The sensor, after computing all the points of collision, generates a resultant vector VCL. So the goal is to basically go in the opposite direction of VCL. So the next sensor in the ascending order of range is the short range target detector, and this sensor is also like a disk sensor which detects the presence of target within its range, and this enables it to pick it up or to send a beacon. The next sensor with the range more than a short range target detector is a long range target detector, and this is similar to a short range detector in detecting the presence of a target within its range. And in addition to this, the sensor also estimates the relative distances to all the targets and chooses the target closest to it, denoted in VTI here. The sensor with the largest range is a communicator, which looks for an active transmitter in its range. An active transmitter is the one which detects a target through its long-range target detector. So similar to a long-range target detector, the sensor also computes its relative distance with the active transmitters and chooses the one closest to it. So for example here, for this agent, this is an active transmitter, as this detects a target within its long-range target detection range. So for deciding the control action based on sensor inputs, we combine all the vectors from the sensors in the equation in the first part and the collision vector in the second part. And we multiply the first part with 1 minus probability of collision, which means when a collision is detected, the negative collision vector in the second part takes over, saving the bot from collisions. Also, these vector additions can make the resultant magnitude high or low. So instead we take a unit vector and multiply that with a scalar. So the random walk vector in the previous equation points the robot in a random direction for a certain duration of time when the sensors have nothing to detect. And finally, the retrieval vector. The retrieval vector points to the nearest collection point when a treasure is on board. The robot, after reaching the collection point, drops the target and goes back to the next one. So let's summarize the searcher and rescuer behaviors with the sensor definitions. Searchers move around the space with all the sensors active. So a searcher exists in either of the 5 states depending on which part of the control equation is active. A searcher, upon detecting target in the short range, stops, waits near the target, transmitting a beacon to other searchers and rescuers. Rescuers are very much like searchers, except for that once a target is detected in the short range, they move it to the nearest collection point. And also, we'd like to mention that not all rescuers are same, and we'll be introducing some new strategies into the rescuers in the further slides. So an outline of the general form of the agent behavior is presented in this algorithm. Let's take a look at the strategies in rescuers, which are nothing but the different types of rescuers. In rescuers of strategy 1, they are very much like searchers with all the sensors active, listen to other rescuers and searchers. But whereas in rescuers of strategy 2, all the sensors are active like in strategy 1, but they are selfish, which means they don't listen to other rescuers but listen to other searchers. In strategy 3, they are just like in strategy 2, but in addition to that, they are also blind, which means their long range target detectors are disabled. So scenarios talk about group compositions. In scenario 1, we maintain a homogeneous group with rescuers of only one strategy type. We vary the group size between 5 and 50. In scenario 2, groups are heterogeneous, which means we maintain the rescuers number constant, but we vary the searchers population between 0 and 50. In scenario 3, groups are also heterogeneous. Here we vary the ratio of searchers to rescuers, but maintain a constant total population at 50. And it must be noted that we maintain the rescue strategy same in a given scenario group. So how do we compare if one group is more heterogeneous than the other? And also it makes more sense if we compare them quantitatively. So according to Tu et al., heterogeneity can be represented as a product of complexity and disparity. Complexity relates to the composition of distinctive agents in a group, and whereas disparity describes the distinctiveness between the agents. So Tu et al. Computed complexity as a product of group's entropy and Rao's quadratic entropy, which uses interspecies distance, and in ecology these are also known as genetic distances, which are a measure of divergence between two species. And so computing this from non-biological HMAs requires exclusive scoring strategies. For this study, we computed scores of searches and rescuers of different strategies based on robots' actions obtained from their behavior trees. The score assignment to the actions is based on the complexity of the task involved. So to compute the total score, we added all the individual action scores. So for example, a searcher across all the strategies has no change in its behavior, and so the possible actions are A0, 1, 4, 5, 7, and 8. So the total score amounts to about 5. And similarly for strategy 1 rescuers, the series of actions are A2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. And so the total score is about 7. So according to our definition of scenarios, scenario 1 is a homogeneous system with just the rescuer, so the values of heterogeneity measure are 0. However, as the groups in scenario 2 and 3 are heterogeneous, we present the graphs here, which are normalized, and these values on the x-axis are rescuer and searcher populations. In both scenarios 2 and 3, the heterogeneity measure is the highest towards the center, as both the agent types are equal in number, and while moving towards the left or right extremes, one of the robot types count is larger, leading to a more homogeneous group. Also, the heterogeneity measure difference between the strategies is directly related to the scores associated with the bots. We conducted experiments with these hyperparameters on the simulator developed in Unity 3D. We fixed 250 target points, 4 collection points, and ran each trial for a maximum of 300 seconds or for the duration of collecting 97% of the blocks. Further, we had 10 random treasure placement configurations and ran 10 trials on each configuration, totaling about 100 trials for each group. How the simulations look like in scenario 1 groups with strategy 1 rescuers. As you can see, the fastest ones are those with the most rescuers. In scenario 2, the rescuer numbers were constant, but we added more searches, so the collection was much faster even with few searches added. In scenario 3, which can also be compared with scenario 150-0 combination, it can be observed that the groups performed badly with replacement of strategy 1 rescuers with searchers, and this clearly indicates replacing more capable agents in a group with less capable ones is not beneficial. Here we present the results of simulations across scenario 3 and different strategies of rescuers. Scenario 3 has a constant population but varying rescuer searcher ratio. And as observed previously, strategy 1 rescuer groups were not getting benefited with more searches added. However, in both strategies 2 and 3, even with a few searches replacing rescuers, they enhance the performance comparable to a 50 strategy 1 rescuer group. So here's a sample of average time series graph for target collection in strategy 1 scenario 3 across all the 100 trials. So from these graphs we computed time constants, that's the time taken for collecting 63% of the blocks. In scenario 1, with decreasing number of rescuers, the time constant value increased as there are more targets and lesser workers. And of all, strategy 3 rescuers perform the worst as they are both selfish and blind, and this is followed by strategy 2. In scenario 2, with constant rescue population and varying searches, the addition of searches to a homogeneous system showed fluctuations in the beginning, and then it settled at a significantly lower value of the strategies. Also, strategy 3 showed the highest change as the rescuers were solely dependent on the searches for target detection as they were blind. In scenario 3, which best explains the importance of heterogeneity, we vary the searcher to rescuer ratio. So the first combination in the graph shows a homogeneous configuration with only rescuers in the group. And in strategies 2 and 3, the time constant constantly dropped until 15 searchers and steadily increased thereafter. So it can be noted that the heterogeneity measure for this scenario increases towards the center of the graph while it is more homogeneous towards the ends. Also, this explains the importance of heterogeneity. So we analyze the efficiency of the system by associating a cost to each of the robots, and we represent this as a ratio of rescuer's cost to searcher's cost. The efficiency of the system was computed using this equation where tau is a time constant from the previous analysis and c is the cost ratio. So in the graph, though strategy 1 showed the higher rate of retrieval observed in the time constant graph, efficiency values were significantly lower when a cost was associated with the group composition. So to address the question we asked in the beginning, we modeled an SAR problem, developed and tested a simulator, and our data analysis demonstrated better retrieval times with more heterogeneity supporting our hypothesis. And on the contrary, there were reversing trends observed when more capable agents were replaced with less capable ones in a group. And further, our cost analysis showed that the robots with limited capabilities combined with other heterogeneous types can significantly improve the efficiency. Thank you, and please let us know if you have any questions.